Last time we were talking about how Joseph Stalin takes over the Soviet Union, and he's going to change the way that the farmers are going to operate. He's going to take most of their crop from them, and this drives down agricultural production and triggers a famine in his country. And not only that, but Stalin on the farms goes after the farmers in the sense of taking away their land and basically merging all these small farms together on these highly mechanized, industrialized farms where these farmers no longer possess the land themselves. The land technically belongs to the state. And ultimately, the farmers are pretty upset about this. Not only do they not get to sell any crops on the open market, but they've lost what little piece of land and independence that they have. And Stalin, anybody who doesn't want to go along with the system is going to find themselves in hot water, to say the least, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. So the socialism in one country, he's industrializing the urban areas, he's putting stronger restrictions in place on the farmers, and in doing this, his economic plans, what Stalin would do was operate under what he called 5-year plans. And the government, the Soviet government, would literally plan the economic production for the 5 years in advance. And this seems like madness to us in a capitalist society because you really don't know what economic factors are going to be in play here. And so production is going to be difficult to predict what people might need or want in the next few years. Imagine if right before the pandemic, somebody had implemented a 5-year plan in the United States. It'd be impossible to have stuck to that 5-year plan. Now, Stalin's 5-year plans and his industrialization and taking over the farms and scrapping the whole new economic policy, this made for really angry people. However, Stalin had a place for people who didn't cooperate. Many of those so-called kulaks, the farmers, the peasants who had prospered under Lenin's rule, those people were really angry, and anybody who resisted was going to be thrown in what we call a gulag. Gulags are forced labor camps across the Soviet Union. You see this particular map right here. Every red dot represents a labor camp, a forced labor camp, where Soviet citizens who were imprisoned had to work, and it's slave labor. This is also how the Soviet Union is going to greatly increase their industrialization. So, for example, you might have to work in a coal mine. You might have to dig iron ore out of the ground. You could work in building bridges. You could be doing anything. This is how the Soviet Union is able to build things like railroads, factories, and extract resources from the ground. Those gulags are going to be valuable sources of free labor. And it gets so bad, the gulags, the problem is so bad with people being imprisoned there, many people are just rounded up by the Soviet secret police, and they're arrested for no particular reason. They're suspected of being a spy, or someone's informed on them, and Stalin and his people don't really care whether or not they're actually guilty. What they care about is getting additional slave labor. Anybody who is perceived as a political threat could find themselves in a gulag. Anybody who speaks out against the Soviet government or says anything or writes anything about Joseph Stalin that doesn't sound good is going to find themselves in a gulag. And these are terribly difficult conditions. If you see, particularly the farther east you go into the area that's known as Siberia, if you go to the north and the east, you're going to see places that are in ridiculously cold weather. That area, Siberia, is typically, there's a reason that most people don't live out there. The gulags, you see right here, forced labor, where individuals right here are taking giant wheelbarrows full of resources to different places, and like I said, they're just being used as slave labor. The average time frame at a gulag was, the average lifespan was about 6 months, and if you died, it's no big deal because they can always arrest more people. The one thing that the Soviet Union was not in short supply of was people. And ultimately, Stalin himself controls the news media and basically portrays it as these people are enemies of the state. They deserve to go to prison. So all the media outlets are telling you you have these terrorists or these enemies of the state who have done terrible things, and a lot of people either didn't think anything of it, or if they questioned the truthfulness of it, they would not be bold enough to say it out loud for fear of ending up in a gulag themselves. The conditions you see right here are really difficult. In many of the gulags, especially during the winter, the temperature can get to anywhere from minus 30 to minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is so cold that skin exposure would definitely put you in a dangerous situation within 15 to 20 minutes. In fact, if you get below zero, most people would tell you you have to cover your entire face and your entire body if you're going to go outside in that cold of weather. Stalin and the communists also would round up people who were political prisoners and have them purged. That's a phrase that they use. To purge something means to eliminate or to get rid of it. And Joseph Stalin and his Soviet leadership did not tolerate any dissent or anybody who disagreed with the official party stance on a particular issue. So if you didn't end up in a gulag, you might just be summarily executed. If you were lucky, you survived a gulag, and when you got out, you didn't say anything about it. Many people are sentenced to years of hard labor, and they're never going to make it through, but there are enough individuals who survive that write about the experience, and in many cases, in some cases, it might be as bad or worse than a Nazi concentration camp. All right, so that's what Joseph Stalin is up to at this particular time.